Okay, okay. So now that I'm on the Loco seat, it's time for another Loco take from DaLocoMan on DaLocoSeat. Today's Loco takes are going to be about two main things. Well, one main thing, but two topics within that one thing. That one thing is the preseason week, this week that we just experienced in WoW Midnight Season 1. Preseason week 1. Technically the first week of the season, but I'm not considering that because we don't have Mythic Raid, we don't have Mythic Plus. Now listen. I know that when we were talking about this before the season started, DaCayman was a bit of a hater. You know, he was a bit of a doomer. Some people like to say. Personally, I found that to be a little bit of an exaggerated take on my opinions, but I have some exaggerated opinions, so I can understand why some people were thinking that. Listen, I would describe myself as having been a bit more cautious than I would have considered myself to have been dooming. And now that we've gotten 1 week of raiding, 1 week of dungeon, well, almost actually, it's only Friday, so we're only about halfway through, and the week's not done yet. But now that we've gotten a taste of what this season has to offer, what this new design philosophy of Blizzard has to offer us, I think it's time for us to talk about it. I think it's time for us to say, were we dooming or were we clairvoyant? Now, listen, it's going to be a long season. This video is going to be even longer, so you're going to want to stay tuned for the entire thing. These ideas might be complex. They're going to be deep. They're going to be profound. Just stay tuned, because I don't think you guys are ready for what I'm about to say. I don't think you're expecting for me to say what it is that I'm going to say. So, listen, I was dooming, as some people said. Like I said, more cautious. I feel pretty positively after this season. I feel hyped for this season. I'm fucking ready for this season. I think a lot of people are hating on the season now who were praising it beforehand, before it even started. And a lot of my concerns, I think, are actually okay. They've been addressed positively in the way that the game has been designed. Let me pull this camera down a bit. Let's actually take a look at this beautiful city, by the way, first of all. Silvermoon City, one of the most incredible things they've ever built in this game. And, they've talked a lot about changing the old world. And if it's going to be changes like this, have at it, change away. Okay, so let's talk about it. Two main things that we're going to talk about today. One, add-ons. How's it feel without them? Do we still have them? Two, class change design philosophy. Let's start with the latter first. Okay, I played 3 specs so far. Brewmaster, as you can see. Unique growth. Fabled Vanquisher, by the way. One of only 4,000 in the world. Or in North America. I don't really know how it breaks down. It doesn't really matter because I'm one of them. Okay, Brewmaster, obviously my main now. Been my main for a little bit of time. One of my favorite specs in the game. Second is VDH. Third is Demo Lock. Kind of hard for me to really talk about Demo Lock because I haven't played it since like Legion or something like that. But I'm gonna talk about it anyway. I mean, who's gonna stop me, right? So okay, Brewmaster, how's it feel? I think it feels pretty decent so far, honestly. Like I think of all the classes I've played, Brewmaster probably feels the best. The only criticism that I really have about it is that the Apex talent and the Blackout combo seem to be like pulling you in two separate directions, which can feel kind of weird at times. Like I don't think it flows super well always because sometimes you get your Apex talent proc, which is like, hey, now you can throw this like super juiced keg, but you want to like your single target's also based around doing Blackout combos into your Tiger Palm punches. So like I feel like having those two, like if I get a proc with my keg, it's like I want to throw my keg, but I also want to do a punch. But to do a punch, I need to do a Blackout kick first, and it just feels weird. Like I don't, sometimes it just feels a little bit weird when you're getting like a certain amount of procs. Like, it just feels a little bit awkward. But other than that, like it feels pretty good generally speaking. I think in AOE it feels sick. Like I'm having a great time in AOE with this spec. Single target, I'm kind of like, yeah, take it or leave it, whatever. But I don't mind it. They pruned a lot of Brewmaster, which like up to this point doesn't really matter because the content's not really that hard. But I'm kind of concerned about going into like difficult mythic bosses or very high mythic plus where like I just don't have as many defensive on use abilities to push, and I'm just gonna rely on my stagger the whole time. Which I know some people were praising because I guess like back in BFA or something, Brewmaster was like a stagger only spec, like it was just default tanky and it could survive stuff. Um, but then like if the damage outpaces your stagger, you don't have as much stuff to push, which I don't really love, and I don't really understand that design philosophy change. because I don't think by removing abilities the classes necessarily become easy. I think the classes were like kind of overly complicated in terms of micro buffs and especially understanding the way these like little micro buffs worked. Like if I'm sitting here and like just clicking my abilities and I'm getting all these like buffs that pop up here, if I'm hitting a target dummy and I want to read what one of these abilities do, it's kind of hard to do that because you have so many micro buffs while you're fighting and they're constantly moving around as like you're getting new buffs and other buffs are falling off and whatever, and it makes it pretty tricky to like understand the buffs that I'm looking at. So I think that was more so the complicated aspect of the game that like all classes had and that all class that should have been addressed for all classes. I don't necessarily think that means that you should have like just removed a bunch of cooldowns because I don't think that necessarily makes the classes feel any easier, especially as a tank. Like I think in many ways that's just gonna make the tanks actually feel like harder and more restricted. But we'll see how it works out. I mean, like similar to what I was saying, people were calling me a doomer, but in reality, I was just being cautiously optimistic or like cautiously hating. I don't know, depending on your view. Um, it's like we gotta wait and see. Like I could foresee this being an issue, but it might not be an issue. In which case, like fine, maybe you have to call for more externals from your healer or something like that, which is fine. Like helps communication too. So I'm not willing to say this is gonna suck yet. Like I don't know. I think it'll probably be okay so far in the raids that I've done. It's felt, pretty decent. It's felt pretty fun. So I'm not too concerned about that. Like I said, the only concern that I really have is like Brewmaster specific with like the Apex talent and the Tiger Palm situation, but it's like a pretty minor one. And like, you can just like look up on logs and stuff what to do in what situation. So it doesn't really matter. I would just say like, naturally it feels a little uncomfortable. Second, VDH. Listen, I think VDH fucking sucks. I do not have a good time with VDH. I think it stinks. Um, one thing to point out is that my haste is really low. My haste was like 8% up until yesterday when I got some like absolutely omega lucky local town drops. But like, um, even now that I have a bit more haste, it still feels kind of bad. There's times where like my fracture is on cooldown and I don't have souls to spend on my soul cleave, and I don't want to just like dump all my fury without the souls, but I will sometimes have nothing else to push really, and like I don't know, I'll just feel like I'm having trouble sustaining myself because the fracture cooldown is so long. Now they've addressed this with the upcoming tuning. They're going to reduce the baseline cooldown of fracture by half a second from 6 seconds to 5.5 seconds. So that should address that problem. That's like a huge haste buff. Plus, we're going to get more haste. So I could see this like feeling better in time. I think DH has often been a class that feels kind of bad at the beginning of expansions because it's a very haste dependent spec. With that being said, though, my concern around VDH is really more so about the general tank change philosophy, which has been happening since Dragonflight, which is again like removing APM and removing cooldowns and buttons to push, which really started with Prot Warrior back in Dragonflight for those history buffs out there, like myself. But the problem with it on VDH is like if you remove so much stuff, I just don't have anything to push, and I'm just squishy, and I feel bad. Like, it's not like, oh, my APM is so high that my hands are hurting. It's just like now I don't have a button to push because I don't have enough of my like resource, souls and fury, and then I don't have my fracture off cooldown yet, so I literally don't have anything to push, but I'm dying, so I need to like run away, which is I don't know. It's like this. It's like, yeah, sure, I don't have my APM has reduced, but that's only because I don't have a button to push, and I'm gonna die. Like it doesn't feel so good. However, there are all these moments when you're playing DH where it's like, you have your 5 souls, and Spirit Bomb is ready, and Firebrand is ready, and Elysian Decree is ready, and Meta is ready, and that means you're gonna have another Spirit Bomb ready, and all of that's gonna drop meteors too, and you're just like ready to go, like, go fucking crazy on that shit. So like, I go into a poll and I hit all those buttons. I hit my Immol Aura, eat all the souls with the Soul Bomb, hit Meta, while my Elysian Decree is going off, and then hit another Spirit Bomb, and like that feels sick. That feels really good. But then you can't do it for another like minute or whatever, um, and that feels bad. So it's like I don't know. But the DH has had this issue for a couple of years now anyway, where it's not been like a very Spirit Bomb focus. It's not been like a super meta, like Metamorphosis, the ability, focus spec. So like I don't know, it's all right. Like that's how it's been for a while anyway. I don't really love the soul cleave play. I just think it's pretty boring. Like fracture, soul cleave, fracture, soul cleave, fracture, soul cleave. Like it's like just, take me out. But like it is what it is. I don't love it. I think with low haste it sucks as well. And that's one where I think it's like more so like the tank change philosophy is affecting that more so than with Brewmaster. Where I just feel like it feels a little unnatural at times. With the DH it feels kind of like I don't have a button to push. Um I don't like that you just cut my hands off. You know what I mean? Like I don't love that, but hey, that's just me. And I bat 100, so I mean that's probably everybody too. Okay, so then when it comes to Demo Lock though, I've also haven't played Demo Lock for a long time, but this is I also want to bring it next to some of the DPS class that I've played. I think it feels like pretty fluid. You know, the class is pretty fun to play. It's a decent time. It's not very complex, which I'm like, like I remember Demo Lock being like a bit more of a complex spec when I played it back in like Legion, but that was like obviously a long time ago. I don't think you get as much of a fantasy as you used to get because like all your demons are small. I hate that Felguard is now like really small. I think that's dumb. Like why is my Felguard not like the big giant that he used to be? He's just like this little thing next to me. He's like as tall as my gnome. That's lame. You don't get as many demons as I feel like you used to get when like Nether Portal and everything was an ability. So I feel like I'm not getting as much of that class fantasy of like my demon army is coming to like get up on you and everything like that. And because like a lot more demons respond passively too, I don't feel as much like I'm pushing a button, summoning a demon, pushing a button, summoning a demon. But like you still kind of are doing that passively. I don't know. Like I said, I haven't played demo in a while. I was like a little bit like, yeah, it's fun to play. I'm enjoying the spec, but I don't want every spec to feel that way. And I would describe it as like in the past, you've had specs that were like just famously easy and specs that were famously difficult. Examples of this would be like Arms Worry is really easy spec. It always has been a pretty easy spec. BM Hunter is like, the room temp IQ spec. And that's cool. I think it's nice to have those, even for people who like to be challenged and like to have a high skill ceiling. It's fun sometimes to play a class that's like a bit more on that like simple. You only have a few buttons to push. Rotation's pretty like easy and understand. And then you've had more complicated specs like Shadow Priest used to be a pretty complicated spec. Subtlety Rogue is a spec that's often a complicated spec, and Arcane Mage has had his period in times where it's been a really complicated spec. Um, and I think that's fine. Like I think you want the diversity in difficulty. I don't think that difficulty is necessarily fun. I think it's like a one-to-one thing. Like just because something's hard is fun. In fact, I think that's often not the case. But I don't think you want every single class to just like feel the same in terms of difficulty, skill expression, skill ceiling. And I think it was cool when you had certain specs where it's like, hey, if you want to have something that's a bit more engaging, there's a spec out there that you can play. In fact, there's multiple. But if all the specs are going to be very simple, I don't know. I don't really know if I like that. So I haven't played a lot of other specs yet, so I don't know. But it seems like everybody's saying their specs pretty easy. Now I don't mind if Blizzard like strips away to rebuild. We hit a little class design reno, you could say. Um, that's fine. Like I don't I'm again holding out hope for that. The reason I'm a bit more skeptical about the class design is because they've sort of been pretty open about the fact that they've found the classes to be too difficult, and they've been doing the same trend with tanks, as I've said. Like they're using the same type of language to talk about it for those history buffs out there, like myself. So like, um, I'm a little more concerned for that they're not going to make it more complicated, but they also might get negative feedback and then change their opinion. We'll get positive feedback, and maybe I'm just the odd man out. The odd man, you could say. It is what it is. Okay, so with that being said, too, the next thing to talk about is add-ons, the add-on change, and how does that feel in the raid environment? It doesn't feel that much different because we still have add-ons. You still have the end sky. I forget what it's called, like not natural sky, whatever. NS, the add-on that tells you like what's going on in the raid at the time. It's giving you like the air horns in your ears and everything like that. I was kind of expecting all that stuff to be gone and like the private orders and everything, but they're not. They still exist. So that's kind of lame, in my opinion. But obviously, a lot of other add-ons have been removed. And what my concern was going into the raid was either A, the raid was gonna be too easy, or B, it was gonna be too hard. I gotta be honest, I feel like they like hit it perfectly, perfect balance. Normal is obviously really easy. A lot of people are complaining, oh, it's so easy. It's like, yeah, it's normal. It's for a different type of person. Um, but I felt like heroic for where heroic should be is where heroic was this past week. You know, the fights were long because we're under geared, sure, but like they're engaging. There's a lot going on, a lot of movement, a lot of things to be looking at, and because there's no weak auras or less weak auras in a sense, less add-ons and everything like that, it felt a lot more engaging, which than it has in the past for me. It felt like I had to like look, and I was like, oh wait, I can actually like I can think, I am type of thing. So like that was cool. I think it looked good. I think the fights so far were good. Obviously, they're only on heroic that we've experienced so far. They haven't felt super interesting, super hard necessarily. Well, I just said they were, I should have misspoke there. I think they were interesting for the difficulty they were. I think the difficulty that they were in fit the fights well. But what I wanted to say is that I do see the potential for them being a lot better fights in Mythic. Like I think that these fights could very easily evolve and adapt really well into Mythic and be super, super good fights. So um, I feel pretty positive about the raid. However, with the add-ons, the thing that I want to talk about is they had this philosophy of we're going to remove the add-ons, but then they didn't give us add-ons to replace the add-ons that like didn't fit the philosophy of removing the add-ons. An example of this would be like a damage meter, right? So like the damage meter is not something that really affects your gameplay in the middle of fighting. It's not like a weak aura. It doesn't help you fight. You don't need it to like do well in a fight. And that's evident by the fact that they gave us a damage meter in the base game UI anyway. The problem is that they like reduce the functionality of the damage meter like so significantly for like no reason. And like that to me is a huge blunder on their part because it's like, if you want to remove add-ons but then like keep some of that functionality in the game still, like you have to have a one-to-one substitute. You can't have all this, you can't have this damage meter which is just like details on 20%, you can't see which mob was somebody attacking, like, am I funneling correctly? Who did the most boss damage, who's hitting the ad, who's not hitting the ad, like that type of stuff. I even think with, if I'm not mistaken, with interrupts, I don't know if, let me just hit a overall. Yeah, so it's telling you like, I guess, what's, maybe this is like what spell they're kicking. I don't even, what is suicide? I don't know if this is like the spell that, I'm a little confused. I mean, maybe it's like a little bit bugged, so I'm looking at an overall and it's like a day later. But I don't remember if it's telling you like what you're actually kicking, like what mob you're kicking, because that'd be good to know too. It's like if I'm doing 100 kicks by the end of a dungeon, but I'm only kicking fireballs and I'm missing all the important kicks, like I'd want to know that as somebody who's like evaluating if I want to continue playing with this player again or something. So like that's a big issue. Another issue that's like related to that would be MDT being gone. MDT still exists in like external sources effectively, but like why is that not in the game? Like how do you remove something like MDT? You don't allow MDT to be in the game, but then you don't give tanks and Mythic Plus players another option for like mapping out their dungeons and like knowing what path to take in a dungeon. Like to me, that's like so ridiculous. I also want to be able to see the details of like what can these mobs do on a map, so I know like should I pull this, should I not pull this? If we pull this, like who's going to kick this mob? This type of stuff. Um, so I feel like removing an add-on like that doesn't really fit the philosophy of why they were pruning the add-ons in the first place, and yet they didn't give us a substitute for that. And even worse for Mythic Plus players, it's like at least you got a damage meter, even if it's kind of sucks. You don't even get an MDT replacement at all. Like it just doesn't exist whatsoever, which is crazy. That's like absolutely insane to me. How is that not part of like the dungeon guide? Like if you go here and you go to like the freaking dungeon guide thing, go to like, I don't know. I mean, they don't even show the ability. Oh, it's because I'm not a boss. But like, how's it not a tab for like the map? You know, the route, whatever the case might be. So that's like my issue with the add-on stuff. On top of the fact that as we already said, like we have add-ons in the game anyway. Kind of whack. But yeah, I mean, other than that, honestly, like absolute movie of a first week of a preseason week. I mean, like sometimes stars are born in the preseason. Sometimes stars have already been alive. So I'm not going to go into much more detail on that. But yeah, I mean, just like absolute movie of a first season. I think the people who are dooming, like, I hope they're eating their words now. For the people like me who are cautiously optimistic and cautiously cautious in general, I think we were spot on again. That's another like one for one hit in a game for me. So now I'm back to like maintaining my average of 100 and just serving the community with like, loco takes from DaLocoSeat by DaLocoMan type of thing. And I plan to keep that going for the whole season. I think, definitely don't nerf Brewmaster. Definitely buff VDH. That's like really my two biggest takeaways from this week. Also, there's actually one more thing I want. Yeah, actually, I'll save that for another video. Just to give you a little sneak peek, little, whatever. There's this achievement that I got, and I wanted to talk about that a bit because I know there's like a huge controversy around it. It's called something like, I guess it's probably in the Delves, probably like Delves Midnight. Unlock a tier 4 dull. That's not it. You know what? Hey, we'll save it for the next video. But for those who know, if you kind of see what I'm hinting at, that's gonna be a loco take. That's all I'm saying. All right. Anyway, keep doing what you're doing. I'll keep doing what I'm doing, and I hope we cross paths at some time and have an absolutely loco meetup.